welcome to Warren Works. Today is another episode of my 52 cards in 52 weeks challenge. Last week I drew a 5 of diamonds, which says guitar wall hanger, so that's what we're going to be building today. I thought it would be fun to challenge myself with a little bent lamination for this project, so I'll start by making some quick and easy forms out of some 3/4 inch plywood. I used a compass to lay out a circle, which was a 9-inch diameter, and I'll use some double stick tape to tape down the center point for my circle cutting jig. And I just ran a singular pass to make sure my circle was on track. And then I can go over to the chop saw and roughly cut that out. And I wanted to leave one of the corners so there was still a sharp 90-degree angle. So I'll only be cutting out 270 degrees of the circle, and I can just take a couple passes going about an 1/8 inch deep at a time. With that cut out, I can unscrew the plywood from my workbench. You can see I have that little sacrificial piece so I don't put too many more dings into my workbench. And then I have this circular shaped piece, which I'll draw a line through the middle and split on the bandsaw. And then I can just run these pieces through the table saw to cut out a couple notches for clamping. I had these offcuts from some walnut butcher block from a big project I recently did, and these were pretty much just destined for the trash. The issue with the butcher block is that there's these scarf joints every so often, so I had to cut around those and make sure I could get a full 16 inches out of each piece. Anywhere there was a scarf joint I didn't want to use for the bent lamination because I thought that would be a weak point. With these blanks roughed out, I could start cutting strips that were 1/16 of an inch thick. It would have been better to use some kind of thin strip ripping jig here, but I don't have one of those, and I just ended up using a push block that I kind of had to sacrifice for this project. So I put all the strips into one of the jigs while I went and had dinner, so I let those sit for about an hour to put a little bit of preload on them, and then I came back out and glued them together. I didn't want to glue all the way up. You'll see I'm going to be doing a woven pattern later on. So I only put the glue about halfway up the strips. So once it got to the flat part of the curve, I didn't want there to be any glue. I didn't use it on the first piece, but then I remembered that I had the offcuts from cutting out the circles. I can use those offcuts as cauls for the opposite side of the clamping jig, and that makes a nice even pressure around the whole thing that works a lot better than just trying to clamp in a bunch of places. So I like to do these one-day builds in one day, usually from sunup to sundown. But every once in a while, I'll start one of these later in the days. So if, say, I start it at 5 o'clock on a Sunday night, as long as I finish it before 5 o'clock on a Monday, I think that still counts as a one-day build. I'll let you be the judge of that, but I think that counts. With bent lamination, I wanted to let these sit up for a little longer. Even though you can get away with doing this in less time, I just don't think it's worth it. I have shown that in a different video on my Rockler 2x4 challenge, though. If you want to check that out, I'll leave the link down below.
Whoa, that's way stronger than I thought it might be.
With all my pieces clamped, I can run over to the joiner to just get a nice clean edge and clean out some of that glue squeeze out. You can see that does a really nice job cleaning it up. I ran a really light pass, about 1/32 of an inch at a time, and just had to take a couple passes. And then this is not the greatest cut to make on a table saw, but with the push stick, I felt pretty comfortable. This is definitely not a beginner technique. This goes without saying, but if you ever see me do a technique that you think is unsafe, definitely don't do it yourself. I can clamp the pieces together and just use a little hand Japanese saw to square up the ends. That way everything's the same length, and then I can go over to my disc sander and put a nice little round over on the edge just to make it look a little nicer. Now, fanning out the unglued edge of the bent lamination, I can use that to weave the two pieces together. And I used a 1-2-3 block as a spacer. I wanted a 2-inch space between, which seems to be the kind of standard for guitar hangers. And then I can trim the ends with the Japanese saw and put some glue in between them. Once that was glued, I could put a clamp on it. Got some nice squeeze out there, and I let that sit for a couple hours while I had lunch and did some other things. And then back to the disc sander just to clean that up. With that sanded, I just did a bunch more hand sanding around the whole piece. Got everything looking nice. Felt really good, and then I can drill a hole for a screw to mount this to a wall. Took it outside and put a couple coats of spray lacquer on it. And with that, it was done, and I just wanted to hang it up in my shop to make sure it worked first. So I went inside and grabbed my guitar, and this happened.
Uh-oh. Well, that's not good. Huh. I wonder if I had something that held this together back here. Like just another piece across there or something. I wonder if having that would allow the acoustic to work. The guitar is actually lighter. So, I mean, it kind of works. So, I love this idea on paper. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work. I didn't realize it was going to spread out so easily. I need to put some kind of brace or something across this, which would actually be good because it'll give the guitar something to rest against on the back. I really like this idea. I think it has legs, but I think it definitely needs some modification to actually be functional. So, I think I'm going to play around with this a little more in the future. But I'm going to wrap this video up because I'm running out of time. With that being said, I'm going to draw my card for next week. What do we get? 8 of hearts. Scrap wood build. Cool. So next week I'll build something out of all my scrap wood. Let me know what you thought of this video down below, and I will see you next week for a scrap wood build. Thanks for watching.